Hello, geometry, and welcome to our last topic here of Unit 1 Geometry Basics on distance and midpoint. Okay, we have talked about both, but we're going to talk about how to find distance when we're not seeing the picture of the segment. We're not talking about like segment addition and with midpoint when we're not talking about setting the two parts equal. What we're getting at today is, remember, distance is another word for length. We're going to focus on finding distance between 2 points. Okay, they're going to look like here at A, or when we get down to B where you're given the points. So what is distance? Distance is a length. Okay, how long is something? Okay, it'd be like if I take a ruler and I want to figure out what is the distance or the length or how many miles, how many inches is something away from one another. Okay, how do we find distance? Okay, this is where it gets interesting. There's different ways that we can find distance, and today we're going to talk about a shortcut, something that you have that's going to be always available to you to help you find distance. Okay, and it's right here on our formula sheet. We haven't seen this yet. This is the first time. And it's right here. On the right hand side, this is actually the circle equation formula. Using this circle equation formula, we actually get the distance formula. And what that basically means is, notice inside here this circle, this point is HK. There's a point on this edge of this circle, which is XY. This one is solving for R squared. R would simply be the distance between these 2 points. So to get the distance equation that we're going to use, we're simply going to take the square root of the circle equation, and we're left with R equals the square root of x minus h squared plus y minus k squared. R becomes, this is my distance. Okay, x, h, y, and k are going to come from our points. So what we're going to end up doing is, when we get to our problems, one of our points we're going to mark it as xy. The other point we're going to mark it as HK, and we're going to substitute into this problem and simplify. Okay, so let's go here and write that in. How do we find the distance? Well, distance, which underneath I'm going to also put R. So it's a reminder, R is the distance between these 2 points. We're going to learn that here later with circles. This is actually the radius. So if we were looking at finding the distance, we are finding the radius length. It equals the square root of x minus h squared plus y minus k squared. Okay, and we have points x, y. We have points h, k. So now it goes down into here an example. So I'm going to give here a brief example before we get into some of these problems. Okay, what's going to happen is we're going to be given 2 points. Maybe we're given 2, 0, and 3, negative 1. What we're going to do is one of our points are going to become HK. So I'm going to mark it HK above the 2 and the 0. Other ones become X, Y. And I'm going to mark that under the 3 and the negative 1. To find the distance, we're simply going to look. Distance, which I'm going to abbreviate DIST, equals the square root x minus h. X is 3 minus h is 2 squared plus y minus k. Negative 1 minus k is 0 squared. All that's going to be left now is to simplify. Equals the square root. 3 minus 2, that is 1 squared, plus negative 1 minus 0 is negative 1, not 0, squared. So now we go to our calculator and I look and I say 1 squared is 1. Negative 1 squared is 1 as well. So I get the square root of 1 plus 1, which is the square root of 2. That becomes my distance, or sometimes we will change that to a decimal. So second x squared to get the square root of 2, and I get an answer of 1.4142. Okay, that's how these problems are going to go. So simply we need to be able to pick out the 2 points, substitute in. So getting here to the first problem. Okay, the big thing here with number 1 that's different from our example is my points are on the graph. Okay, I need to be able to pick and tell what the points are on the graph. Okay, so when we're finding the distance, we're actually finding the length of what is the line that connects those 2 points. One of my points is here at negative 5, 3. That's this top one. Okay, remember it's x, y. And then I have negative 2, negative 3. So I'm going to write them over here. I have negative 5, 3. And then I have negative 2, negative 3. One of the points is HK. One of them is XY. It does not matter which gets H, K, X, and Y. So my distance is going to equal the square root of X minus H. Negative 2 minus H is a negative 5 squared plus Y minus K. Negative 3 minus 3 squared. Okay, you do not have to have that memorized. I'm seeing it up here. I also see it on my formula sheet off to the side. So now simplifying. Negative 2 minus a negative 5. If you have minus a negative, remember it changes it to plus. So this is really negative 2 plus 5, which is 3 squared, plus negative 3 minus 3 is a negative 6 squared. This is the square root of 3 squared is 9 plus, when you get to the negative 6 squared, put it in parentheses. Parentheses negative 6 squared, 36. Any number squared, whether it's positive or negative, should come out to be positive. This equals the square root of 45 when I add them together. With if I do the square root of 45, I get 6.7082. There would be my final answer. Okay, looking here at B. The points are already given to me. H, K, X, Y. So now, distance equals the square root of X minus H. Negative 4 minus 3 squared plus Y minus K. Negative 1 minus a negative 6 squared. I have minus a negative, plus, plus. This is negative 4 minus 3, negative 7 squared, plus negative 1 plus 6 is 5 squared. This is the square root of 49 plus 25. 49 plus 25, this is the square root of 74, which equals the square root of 74 is 8.6023. Okay, let's look at one more final problem. Okay, it's the same process over and over again. X, Y, H, K. Distance equals X minus H, negative 7 minus a negative 7 squared plus Y minus k, 2 minus a negative 8 squared. Plus, 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 plus. Anytime they're minus and negative, those both change to a positive. So this is the square root of negative 7 plus 7, so that would be 0 squared. Plus 2 plus 8, that is a 10 squared. This becomes the square root of 0 plus 100, which is the square root of 100, and I get an answer. Square root of 100 is 10. 10 is my distance. Okay, so really, the formula is already given to you and always will be. It's a simple, can you remember to substitute in? Okay, that covers distance. We will look at more problems in class as well. Okay, looking here at midpoint. We've talked a little bit about midpoint. Now we're going to just see it with points rather than algebraic expressions. What is a midpoint? This is a point that cuts a segment in half. Now, how do you find a midpoint when given 2 points? This is a formula that is not given somewhere else. It's one you have to remember. You're going to take the x's from your 2 points, add them, and divide by 2. And then you're going to take your y's, add them together, and divide by 2. The big thing is when you're given a midpoint at the end, it should always be an x, comma, y again. This x plus x divided by 2 goes in the first spot. Y plus y divided by 2 goes in the second spot. So looking at an example, we'll say we have 3, 2, and then we'll have 4, negative 1. Okay, so x, y, x, y. It does not matter the order of which x's go first. 3 plus 4 divided by 2. That's 7 divided by 2, or 3.5. Now I'm going to do the same thing with y's. 2 plus a negative 1 divided by 2. That is 1 divided by 2, which is 0.5. Your midpoint would have been 3.5, comma, 0.5. Sometimes your midpoint will be whole numbers. If they are not whole numbers, they will have a decimal of 0.5. So now, going down here to some problems. Find the midpoint between the following points. X, y, x, y. 7 plus a negative 3 divided by 2. That's 4 divided by 2, or 2. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing with y's. 12 plus 0 divided by 2. 12 divided by 2, which I get a 6. So on my right-hand side is my y's. On my left-hand side is my x's. Final answer is x, comma, y, so it would be 2, comma, 6. Okay, looking here at the next one. xy, xy. Negative 6 plus a negative 3 divided by 2. That's a negative 9 divided by 2, which is a negative 4.5. There's my x's. Now with my y's. Negative 7 plus 8 divided by 2. That's 1 divided by 2, which is 0.5. Final answer is x for negative 4.5, comma, y of 0.5. Okay, last one. xy, xy. 9 plus a negative 3 divided by 2. That's 6 divided by 2, or 3. And then I look and say y's. 10 plus a negative 6 divided by 2. That's 4 divided by 2, which is 2. If it's x, comma, y, x has got me a 3, y has got me a 2. Okay, midpoint is one we have to memorize. Distance is not. Okay, looking here at some more midpoint stuff. So they want to know, can you find an endpoint if you're given the midpoint and one endpoint? And the answer is yes. So what this looks like is It's like we have a full segment on a graph, and we also have that this is the midpoint. These are endpoints on either side. Okay, maybe for instance, I know that my midpoint is 3, 2, and I know that this endpoint is 6, 5. They want to know, can we find the other endpoint? And the answer is yes. How you find a missing endpoint is what I got to remember. Endpoints and midpoints are like a sandwich. We have two endpoints like we have two slices of bread, and in the middle is what I put inside my sandwich, or in this case, my midpoint. I think about meat when I see M. Beside one of the E's or the endpoints, I'm going to put what we know from the problem, which is 6, 5. Beside M, I put what I know for the midpoint. The other E gets left blank for right now. Starting at the endpoint you know, okay, starting on the X's side, I'm going to ask myself, what do I have to add or subtract to get me from 6 to 3? Well, I had to subtract 3. Once you know what got you to the midpoint, you're going to repeat that and subtract 3 again. I'm going to take 3 minus a negative 3, and I get 0. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing then on my Y side. What did I have to add or subtract to get me from 5 to 12? I had to add 7. Oop, that's not a 12. Sorry, my mistake. It's from 5 to a 2. So I have to subtract 3. I have to go through and subtract 3 again. 2 minus 3 is a negative 1. Whatever you're left with here at the other endpoint, that is what my final answer is. Okay, so let's look at some of these. On this, we're finding a missing endpoint given one endpoint and a midpoint. So sandwich, E, M, E. Beside one of the endpoints, I put my endpoint. Beside my midpoint, beside the M, I put my midpoint. Okay, starting on the X's, I'm going to ask myself, always starting at the endpoint, how did I get from 5 to negative 1? I subtract 6. I'm going to then subtract 6 again. Negative 1 minus 6 is a negative 7. And then on the side of Y's, how do I get from negative 3 to 0? I add 3. 0 plus 3 gets me 3. There would then be my final answer for the other endpoint that is missing. Okay, another problem. Create a sandwich, E, M, E. Beside either one of the E's, put the endpoint you know. Beside the M, put the midpoint that we know. Starting at X's, I'm going to ask myself, what do I add or subtract to negative 7 to get me to 1? I add 8. I'm going to add 8 again. 1 plus 8 gives me 9. Okay, on the side of Y's, how do I get from negative 6 to negative 4? I add 2. So I'm going to add 2. Negative 4 plus 2 is a negative 2. Right there, 9, negative 2 is my other endpoint. Okay, a couple more endpoint problems dealing with algebraic. So, if P is the midpoint of XY, okay, knowing that P is the midpoint of XY, we have enough to draw some type of picture. So, I'm going to draw a segment X, Y. If P is the midpoint, P is right here in the center. That is my midpoint, so I mark it MP. If I know something is a midpoint, remember, on either side of midpoint, we put those tick marks to show that those pieces of information are congruent. XP is 8x minus 2. PY is 12x minus 30. They want me to find the value of X, XP, PY, and XY. So, starting with solving for x, if these two pieces are equal or have the same tick mark, we set them equal to each other. So, 12x minus 30 equals 8x minus 2. I'm going to subtract 8x on both sides. I get 4x minus 30 equals negative 2. Add 30 to both sides. 4x equals negative 2 and a 30 is a 28. Divide by 4. I get x to equal 7. Okay, now they want me to find xp. xp would be 8 times 7 minus 2. That would be 56 minus 2, which is 54. Then they want py. This would be 12 times 7 minus 30. That's 84 minus 30, which is also 54. So I found xp, py. I know x. To find xy. xy, what I need to realize is my whole thing. To find xy, which is my whole, I add the two parts, which is 54 and 54, to be a 108. Okay, the distance or the length of whole xy is 108. Okay, looking here at the last one for today before we practice some of these in class. G is the midpoint of FH. So I have F, H, G is my midpoint. If something is the midpoint on either side, I put those tick marks to show that they are congruent. They tell me FG is 14x plus 25. They tell me GH is 73 minus 2x. I know both of my tick marks. If you know both of your tick marks, set them equal. 14x plus 25 equals 73 minus 2x. Add 2x to both sides to get 16x plus 25 equals 73. And then I could minus 25 on both sides. 16x equals 73 minus 25 is 48. Divide by 16. I get that x equals 3. Okay, 48 divided by 16 is 3. Okay, now filling out what else they have. FG, this would be 14 times 3 plus 25. 14 times 3 is 42 plus 25. That is 67. GH will be 73 minus 2 times 3, so that would be 73 minus 6. Okay, and I get an answer of 67 as well. To figure out the whole distance of FH. FH is my whole because it goes from endpoint to endpoint. Whole is part plus part equals whole. So, 67 plus 67 is... Okay, 67 plus 67 is 134. That would represent the whole distance of FH. Okay, and like I said, we'll be dealing with these problems again in class so we can see more of them, so you're able to ask questions and you're able to get verification if these are right or wrong. Okay, that ends us with our distance and midpoint. When we get in class, we'll work through all of these. Get ready now. We're starting to prepare for a test. Okay, see you later, geometry. If you have questions, please ask them now.